If you've ever dealt with a flea infestation that just won't quit, roaches scurrying across your kitchen counter at night, or the telltale itchy bites of bedbugs hiding in your mattress seams, you already know how frustrating and expensive pest control can be. Store-bought sprays are loaded with harsh chemicals, exterminator visits can cost hundreds of dollars, and many of these treatments still don't solve the problem for good. But there's a simple, natural, incredibly affordable powder that's been quietly solving these exact problems for homeowners for decades. And today, we're going to talk about exactly how it works, how to use it safely, and why it might be the single most underrated pest control tool sitting on a hardware store shelf. That powder is Diatomaceous earth, often shortened to DE, and once you understand how it eliminates fleas, roaches, and bedbugs naturally, you'll wonder why more people aren't using it. Let's start with what Diatomaceous earth actually is, because understanding this makes it much easier to trust how effective it is. Diatomaceous earth is made from the fossilized remains of tiny aquatic organisms called diatoms. These microscopic algae have hard shells made of silica, and over millions of years, their remains settle and compress into soft, chalky, sedimentary rock. That rock is mined, dried, and ground into an ultrafine powder that looks a lot like flour or baby powder. To us, it feels completely harmless, and for humans and larger pets, food-grade versions of it genuinely are safe in normal household use. But to insects like fleas, roaches, and bedbugs, this powder is absolutely devastating, and the reason has nothing to do with poison. Diatomaceous earth works mechanically, not chemically, which is exactly why it's considered such a natural pest control option. Under a microscope, each particle of the powder is sharp and abrasive, almost like tiny shards of glass. When insects crawl through it, those sharp edges cut into their exoskeleton, the hard outer shell that protects their body and holds moisture in. Once that protective layer is compromised, the powder's natural absorbent properties go to work, pulling the waxy coating and moisture right out of the insect's body. Essentially, the bug dies from severe dehydration within a matter of hours to a few days. There's no odor, no toxic fumes, and no chemical resistance that pests can build up over time the way they can with sprays and baits. This is a huge part of why Diatomaceous earth has become such a popular natural solution against fleas, roaches, and bedbugs in homes where people want effective pest control without introducing harsh chemicals around children, pets, or food preparation areas. Now, let's talk specifically about how this simple powder helps eliminate fleas, because this is one of the most common uses for it in homes with pets. Fleas are notoriously difficult to get rid of, because they don't just live on your cat or dog, they live in your carpet fibers, in the cracks of your hardwood floors, in pet bedding, and even in upholstered furniture. A flea infestation can involve eggs, larvae, and adult fleas all at different life stages, which is why one round of treatment often isn't enough. This is where Diatomaceous earth becomes so useful for eliminating fleas naturally. By lightly dusting food-grade diatomaceous earth across carpets, rugs, pet beds, and along baseboards, you create an environment that is lethal to fleas at every stage of their development. The powder should be worked gently into carpet fibers using a broom or a soft brush, left to sit for at least a few hours, ideally overnight, and then vacuumed up thoroughly. This process not only kills existing fleas, but also helps break the reproductive cycle, because as new fleas hatch and try to move through the treated area, they come into contact with the powder and are quickly eliminated. For particularly stubborn flea problems, repeating this treatment every few days for 2 to 3 weeks tends to fully clear an infestation, since flea eggs can take time to hatch, and you want to catch every new generation as they emerge. Roaches are another pest that homeowners dread, and for good reason. Cockroaches are resilient, they reproduce quickly, and they are notorious for surviving treatments that would kill most other insects. This is exactly why Diatomaceous earth has become such a trusted natural method for roach control in kitchens, bathrooms, basements, and other areas where roaches like to hide. Roaches are especially vulnerable to this powder because of their behavior. They constantly groom themselves, running their legs and antennae over their bodies, which means that any diatomaceous earth they walk through gets ingested during grooming, damaging them from the inside as well as the outside. To use this powder effectively against roaches, homeowners should apply a very thin, almost invisible layer along baseboards, inside cabinets, under sinks, behind appliances like the refrigerator and stove, and around any cracks or gaps where roaches might be entering the home. The key here is a thin layer rather than a thick one, because roaches need to walk through the powder, not around a visible pile of it. Thick clumps can actually cause roaches to avoid the area entirely, while a fine, barely visible dusting ensures they make direct contact as they travel their usual paths. Because roaches often enter homes through plumbing gaps, vents, and small cracks in the foundation. Treating these entry points with diatomaceous earth creates an ongoing barrier that continues working for weeks, since the powder doesn't lose its effectiveness unless it becomes wet. Bedbugs might be the most feared pest of all for homeowners, mostly because of how difficult they are to detect and how quickly they can spread from room to room or even between apartments in a shared building. Unlike fleas or roaches, bedbugs don't just hide in obvious places. They tuck themselves into mattress seams, box spring corners, headboards, baseboards, electrical outlets, and even inside picture frames on the wall. This is part of why traditional treatments often fail, because if even a small number of bedbugs are missed, the infestation can return within weeks. Diatomaceous earth offers a natural advantage here because, unlike sprays that need to make direct contact to work, this powder creates a long-lasting barrier that keeps working as bedbugs travel through it over time. To use diatomaceous earth for bedbugs, homeowners should apply a thin layer around the perimeter of the mattress, along the bed frame, inside box spring seams, along baseboards near the bed, and around any furniture within a few feet of the sleeping area. It's also worth treating electrical outlet covers, since bedbugs are known to travel through wall voids and emerge through outlets at night. Because bedbug eggs are resistant to many typical treatments, using diatomaceous earth consistently over 2 to 4 weeks is important, since it needs to affect not just the adults, but also the newly hatched nymphs as they emerge and begin moving through treated areas. One of the reasons homeowners are increasingly turning to this simple powder is that it solves a problem that chemical sprays often can't, which is long-term prevention. Because diatomaceous earth remains effective as long as it stays dry, a single application in the right spots can continue working for weeks or even months, especially in areas that aren't disturbed often, like inside wall voids, under furniture, or in crawl spaces. This makes it incredibly cost-effective compared to repeated exterminator visits or replacing chemical sprays every few weeks. A single bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth typically costs far less than one professional pest control visit, and it can treat an entire home multiple times over. Of course, using this powder correctly matters just as much as knowing why it works. The single most important thing every homeowner needs to know is to always use food-grade diatomaceous earth for pest control inside the home, especially in areas where pets or children spend time. There's another type called filter-grade diatomaceous earth, which is used in swimming pool filtration systems and has been processed differently, making it far more hazardous to inhale. Food-grade DE is the version that's considered safe for use around living spaces. But even with the food-grade type, it's smart to wear a simple dust mask while applying it, since inhaling any fine powder repeatedly isn't good for the lungs. It's also worth applying it on a calm day if you're treating outdoor areas, since wind can easily blow the powder away from where you want it and into the air where you're breathing. Something else worth mentioning is that diatomaceous earth loses its effectiveness when it gets wet, because the moisture clumps the fine particles together and dulls their sharp, abrasive edges. This means it needs to be reapplied after mopping floors, after rain if used outdoors, or in areas with high humidity. For homeowners dealing with a serious infestation of fleas, roaches, or bedbugs, keeping the treated areas dry and reapplying every 1 to 2 weeks tends to produce the best results, especially during the first month of treatment when you're trying to break the full life cycle of the pests. It's also helpful to pair diatomaceous earth with basic cleaning habits that make your home less inviting to these pests in the first place. For fleas, that means regularly washing pet bedding in hot water and vacuuming carpets frequently, since vacuuming alone removes a surprising number of eggs and larvae. For roaches, keeping food sealed, wiping down counters, and fixing leaky pipes removes the food and water sources that draw them in to begin with. For bedbugs, regularly inspecting mattress seams and reducing clutter around the bed limits the number of hiding spots available. None of these steps replace the powder itself, but combining them creates a much stronger, longer-lasting defense against reinfestation. What makes diatomaceous earth stand out among natural pest control methods is that it isn't a short-term fix disguised as a long-term solution. Because it works through physical action rather than chemical toxicity, pests can't develop resistance to it the way they sometimes do with pesticide sprays. A roach or bedbug population that has become resistant to certain chemical treatments will still be just as vulnerable to diatomaceous earth as it always was, which makes this simple powder a genuinely reliable long-term tool rather than something that becomes less effective over time. For homeowners who are dealing with any combination of fleas, roaches, and bedbugs at once, which does happen more often than people expect, diatomaceous earth is especially valuable because it doesn't require 3 different products or 3 different treatment plans. The same food-grade powder applied in the right spots for each pest, whether that's carpets and pet bedding for fleas, cracks and entry points for roaches, or mattress seams and bed frames for bedbugs, can address all 3 problems using one simple, inexpensive, and natural solution. This kind of all-in-one approach is a big part of why so many homeowners have shifted away from harsh chemical sprays and toward this powder as their go-to method for pest control. At the end of the day, Dealing with fleas, roaches, or bedbugs doesn't have to mean filling your home with chemicals or spending a fortune on repeated treatments. Diatomaceous earth offers a natural, affordable, and genuinely effective way to eliminate these pests using nothing more than a fine powder made from fossilized algae. By understanding how it works, applying it correctly in the right areas, keeping it dry, and reapplying consistently over the first few weeks, homeowners can break the life cycle of these pests and create long-lasting protection that chemical sprays often can't match. If you've been struggling with any of these infestations, picking up a bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth might just be the simplest and most effective step you take toward finally getting your home back.